second speaker is an economics professor at Monterey Institute and gets asked this question a lot. And she's going to be delivering her speech number 4 on how to say it in the Competent Communicator Manual. The title of the speech is The Economic Meltdown and the Rescue It Explained. Please join me in welcoming Moyara Ruehsen.
It's a yellow light
Oh, thank you. Somebody else. Thank you, Mike.
Time flies.
You can sit down now.
All right, thank you very much. I recently heard an Obama administration economist try to explain the recent bailouts and other rescue packages as attempts to run into a burning building that is our economy and throw people straight out the window, albeit into the hotel swimming pool. It's not a pretty sight, but it's all that we have time for, and we can't sit back and worry like Olympic diving judges about the size of the splash. I thought that this was a brilliant analogy and think that it can be developed further, not only to describe the rescue, but also how this whole meltdown happened in the first place and what we should do in order to craft a useful recovery package. So inspired by this burning building analogy and the recent film The Hangover, here it goes. Imagine, if you will, the U.S. economy as a high-rise hotel, a very fancy high-rise hotel, structurally sound, built with the finest materials. And on the lower level of the building reside people like you and I. Middle-class households, and a lot of middle-class homeowners. On the upper levels of the building reside the Wall Street fat cats and other corporate types, and then you have everyone in between. So what happened during the final years of the Bush administration was an orgy of irresponsible behavior on the part of all the hotel guests who were clearly enfranchised but took it to a whole new level. There were no rules, or if there were any rules, those rules weren't enforced. There was no security. Guests could do as they please. And everyone, corporations, households, and even the government, which in this case is our hotel management, were binging on cheap credit. And binging is probably an understatement. So if we're going to turn this into a metaphorical parable, the hotel guests were popping ecstasy pills, washing it down with plenty of scotch, and then hopping into bed with dubious financial advisors who were clueless at best, unscrupulous at worst, and without protection, I might add. And then they all passed out in their rooms with burning cigarettes still clutched between their fingers. The next morning, they all woke up with a horrible hangover, not to mention smoldering carpets and mattresses from all of those carelessly lit cigarettes. And some of those smoldering embers ignited. And before we could groggily ask ourselves what happened, the whole building is up in flames. Last year's fire brigade was ill prepared to handle the situation. They failed to call enough fire trucks, or for that matter, unblock the exits. This year's fire brigade is now faced with an inferno. They called in as many fire trucks as they could because they knew that failure to extinguish the flames meant that the building was likely to collapse, and we could not let that happen because in that case, everyone in the building is going to perish. So with what few remaining resources they had, they put together a rescue team to try to get the hotel guests out of the building. And as with all emergencies, triage decisions have to be made. Should they rescue the guests on the top floors first? Or should they go after the people on the lower floors first? However, and remember the people on the top floor are the corporate bigwigs, and the people on the bottom floor are people like us. If we pause too long to argue over who should we rescue first, we might end up in a situation where more lives perish. And the fact is that there are going to be trade-offs in either case, so let's just make a decision. So they decided to start at the top of the building. There was no time to escort anyone down the stairwells. There was only time to toss them out the window into that hotel swimming pool. And all the while, conservative pundits from Fox News and other media outlets are sitting by the side of the pool like Olympic diving judges, complaining about the size of those splashes. Now, it's true that if too much water splashes out of the pool, there might not be enough water left for a safe landing for the rest of us. But I really don't think that that is likely to happen. A little bit of water will be wasted. I don't doubt that, but there's no other practical way to save lives. And our number one priority is to save as many lives as possible in addition to saving the building. Although we haven't finished putting out the flames, it behooves us to start thinking about what comes next. We don't have the money to tear down the building and rebuild from scratch. Instead, we need to gut a few rooms, maybe even gut a few floors, and make the necessary repairs. But when we do, we should do so properly with flame retardant materials, adequate smoke detectors, and plenty of fire escapes. And perhaps we also need to impose some appropriate rules of conduct on ourselves, the hotel guests. Because what happened in Vegas doesn't just stay in Vegas, we are Vegas.